Hey guys, and welcome back to Donica and Shelby Read. I'm Donica.
I'm Shelby.
And today we are doing one of the most fun books of the year to date.
You said one of our most fun books of the year.
Well, it's one of our most fun books of the year too. I don't care. I'm sticking by it. So here's our top 10 books of the year.
Woo!
Y'all, this has been one of my funnest years of reading of my life. Of my life.
This is my only year of reading of my life, and I had so much fun.
My top 3 are my top 3, undoubtedly, 1, 2, and 3. But the rest, I tried to put them in order. You know your top 3 for sure.
Yeah, I have my top 3. One of them is in there because I love it, the other is because I love it, and the other is like, it's just got to be in there. But yeah, the other
So I'm going to go from 10 to 1. Shelby's 7 are kind of like she's just pulling them up. Like they're not...
Yes.
Technically in order.
Mm-hmm. There's
it's
no
just
order.
Whatever your spirit wants to grab at the moment.
Yes.
Number 10, book of the year, was my favorite horror/gore. It was A Troop by Nick Cutter. It's got to be in here. Because some books I just loved them, but I tried to have like my top thriller/psychological thriller, my top middle grade, and this one was top horror. This was his first novel I've read by him. When I tell y'all, it's all dusty. It's been on
Sorry.
Girl, when I said read it! This had one of the most gruesome scenes where, for the first time I can remember, I had to kind of close it and think, what did I get myself into? Because it was so gruesome. It was fun. I read this in October. Could not have picked a better month. I'm actually going to read one of his other novels called The Deep in January because I want to start with a bang. Highly recommend. He's definitely now my go-to. I'm going to try to read everything by him. It was so fun.
Julio, so I'm just going to pick randomly. I'll start with The Vanishing Half, which just, what?
Goodreads?
Yeah, it just won.
It's won a lot of
It's
awards.
won so many, like,
Was it
book of the year.
Month too?
It was Book of the Month's top book of the year, and then it was like it won a Goodreads best historical fiction, I think, and
it killed it.
It's really doing great. So part of me put it in here because I'm like, wow, what are the odds that I got, like, well, it's because of Book of the Month. I love Book of the Month. What are the odds that I would have actually read this book this year, like a book that is so on pulse and hot
Shelby
topic?
has such great taste for books. Like
it's very random is what it is.
But you are like on the pulse of booktube without even trying. I feel like your picks are always amazing.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm putting this in here because this was one of those stories that I saw life through a lens that I was not expecting to. This book was just very eye-opening, very heartbreaking.
Can you imagine? That is the front and center on your bookshelf.
Yeah,
I don't care
beautiful.
who you are.
The writing was beautiful. The story was beautiful. It was very heartbreaking, and I think it was an important book to have read this year.
So thank you, Bennett.
Yes, thank you, Bennett.
So my number 9 pick is also my favorite middle grade of the year, and no surprise, y'all, I've been raving about this all year since I read it. It's called The Midnight Hour by Benjamin Reed and Laura Trinder. I love when a female, especially when you're in middle grade or younger, a female main character is written snarky or sassy, but it is like praised. It's something that is a part of her that's beautiful instead of it being like, oh, she's a brat or whatever. So our main character in this book, I think she called her mouth her gob, and she'd be like, oh, my gob's I again. It made me laugh out loud through the whole book, which is so rare, I feel like, in middle grade to have me actually cackling. Love this book. I highly recommend if you're a fan of middle grade. If you're not, this is a really fun read.
And it was an Owl Crate book, right?
And it was an Owl Crate, yes.
Okay, I guess I'll go into The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I wasn't joking when I said this was one of my top books of the year after I read it. One of my top 3 books of the year, this reminded me a lot of, but like a spooky version. It was psychologically really scary, but then it was also like paranormally very scary, and the writing was beautiful, and I loved the main character, and I really identified with her a lot, and the characters were awesome. And there was, I guess, another thing I liked about it is that I did not always know what was going on. I didn't understand it.
It
didn't make me mad.
You said it was kind of open-ended a little bit. That's neat.
This was an awesome book to have read, and then also I think it was cool to read it because so many people are talking about the Netflix show, and I have a little bit of pride in being like, okay, well, I read the book.
And I watched the show. You think you're better than me. Watched the show, didn't read the book. She's read the book, didn't watch the show. And I'm like, that doesn't even sound like the show. I think it really is loosely based.
Yeah, it probably
loosely
is.
based. Like, it's probably the same house. But
Yeah.
the family, everything's different.
Yeah. Super cool. Oh, and then I also like that a lot of the times this year, my books would like quote each other. And this book was quoted in another one of my favorite books of the year. So I thought that was
really
cool.
Yeah. So book number 8 for me was my favorite thriller of the year. It was The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. And y'all, I have not been so surprised by a twist. It's very hard for me to not call what's happening in thrillers and mysteries. It was just so good, y'all. We have a whole book talk on it. It was, I think, our first book talk.
Yeah.
We'll link that book talk down below. It was our first one. We were so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Do you remember we were like,
Didn't we have to refilm it like multiple times?
Oh, we did this in 2 parts.
And the first part is not available to the public.
Actually, it's not listed, but it's in the description. I'm like, if you want to see our first part, click here, but please don't.
It was really uncomfortable, and we had to refilm it, remember? Like, didn't we have to refilm the second one twice?
I don't know. It was weird. It's still special in my heart because that's our beginnings. We can't go back.
Next, I'll just do a transition from Haunting of Hill House to Salem's Lot. I really loved Salem's Lot. It was my first time ever reading Stephen King. I think that he's kind of a controversial writer. A lot of people are like, I'm never going to read Stephen King. And some people are like, he's just so classic, like you can't avoid it.
He's classic.
And I thought that this was a great intro to like horror that year of Spooktober. It was super scary. The characters were really
You said that
vibrant.
year of Spooktober. Do you mean that month?
Yeah, I mean that month. Wanted it to be all year long. It was just a great horror book. It was a great creature feature, if you will. I think that's what those are called. But I just loved it. I really loved it. And I loved that it was gruesome. And I loved that it was like kind of
dark.
There was a lot of darkness that I could think about. I thought it was great. Great. I think it was a great introduction to Stephen King, too.
Yeah. Have you read more of him yet, or you want to?
No, I want to. Luckily, this is a trilogy. This is like not a trilogy. It's like a 3-in-1 book. So it has 2 of his others. It has Carrie and The Shining in it as well. So I do want to read those.
The Shining, you gotta read The Shining.
Yeah, everybody.
I feel like we should do a book talk maybe on it.
That would be really cool.
I don't know if I've ever read it. I've seen the movie multiple times.
Yeah. This was actually
creepy.
Donica's, this big old thing.
So I might have read it if that was my, I don't know. My brain has like expunged that. So number 7 for me is actually the trilogy, the Scythe trilogy. I have read the first 2. I started reading the third, which is The Toll, but I kind of got caught up in other Christmas reads. But y'all, Neal Shusterman, his writing is absolutely incredible. Incredible. I cannot tell you enough. One thing I can say is when you're reading Scythe, it's one story. And then by the time you get over here, you're in this, like, you didn't realize how deep and how, you just really don't know how deep he's going to get politically and talking about just morally. When you're reading Scythe, like, things that are told in here at the very beginning, how they're woven and how you realize, oh my goodness, things are playing such a bigger part. It's so good, y'all. Please. I always see this on BookTube. I always see this recommended. Highly, highly recommend if you're looking for a thought-provoking series.
What a perfect time for me to talk about mine.
What?
My next book I want to talk about is the Hunger Games series.
Oh, and that was, I have right here on the top, honorable mentions, and I reread the Hunger Games, so I couldn't like add it with good conscience, but
the Hunger Games, guys. I'm so happy that I read the Hunger Games.
I'm so happy
this year.
You believed me and you read them with me.
So much more. If y'all were around for Hunger Games May, you know.
We'll link them.
But if you weren't, go back and watch Hunger Games May. I was such a huge Hunger Games fan. I will never forget that story, those characters. I've said this every single time we talked about it. But the Hunger Games on the outside, what it looks like is totally different than what you can really get if you read the books. So good. Loved it. In fact, I may have to kick out one of my top 3 because I'm thinking about how much I love it again. In fact, it might have been in my top 3.
Well, may or may not be top 3, but I too would have put that in my top 3.
Yeah. It was so good. I'm so glad that I read it this year.
Okay, so number 6, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I'm a murderino. I tell anyone who asks. I love true crime. I'm so happy that it seems like true crime is really getting its like the oomph behind it to like, now you're not weird when you say like, I just watch murder shows, or you're not weird. Everyone's like, oh yeah, it's actually like a hobby. It's like me having my anxiety and making sure I don't get murdered by figuring out all the ways I could be murdered. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. Loved it. Loved the main character, Pip. It's just a really fun murder mystery. I didn't really call the ending. The main character is super smart. She's not written in a way that she's like naive or not putting anything together. As soon as the clue comes up, she's on it. She's piecing it together right along with you. Very highly recommend this book for sure, especially if you love true crime.
Oh, I'll talk about Educated by Tara Westover.
Ooh.
Actually, I think I'm actually probably putting these in order. Subconsciously, this is probably the order that I would have put them in anyways.
But, except the Hunger Games.
I think I accidentally talked about that one too soon. I think that was a number 3.
You were just so excited.
I do not have the physical book, which is actually a very beautiful cover.
With the pencil?
Yeah, it's a pencil, and I was just staring at the cover this morning, and I realized there's a tiny little person in the tip of the pencil, and I was like, huh? Aww. And I realized the pencil is like the mountain that she lived on when she was in the wilderness, or not the wilderness, when she was with her survivalist family.
That's so pretty.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. And then I was looking at the cover, I was like, wow, that's beautiful. Educated by Tara Westover, I think that one was a really big popular winner, like last year in 2019 or 2018, whenever it came out, it was very, very popular. That book is amazing for 2 reasons. First of all, what she lived through as a child was already absolutely insane. It's a memoir, if anybody hasn't heard of it. First of all, what that woman went through in her childhood was enough that she could have written her autobiography on that, like just to know what she went through. The odds of her coming out of that childhood and going off to an Ivy League school, that's just even more insane.
So
like, I remember after I read it, I was like, I was so lucky to know this. Like, I'm so glad.
Didn't you feel like you saw your own privilege, like in a whole different way?
It just spoke to me a lot about education. Even if it didn't have a message, the story in itself was just so insane, and it's almost...
Wasn't the story the message?
Yeah, not that it didn't have one. I'm just saying, like, even if for some reason, like, there was no message and this book was, like, stripped of a message, the story itself is just absolutely insane. Yeah, that was a great book that I read this year.
I remember, I mean, that's one of the ones I just remember you being, like, touched by it and, like, being like, wow, this was what I needed to read after just coming off of 4 years of college and high school, you know, all of that. So my 5th book, barely missing the top 4, was A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. Y'all, this book was so fun. Okay, so Harry Potter has really ruined magic in schools for me because it's my all-time top, books. But this one did it in such a fun way where you're in a school of magic where when you're out of the school, monsters are trying to kill you for your magic and you're kind of shunned from people with non-magic. And then you're in the school and you can't graduate unless you survive because the school's trying to kill you as well. So it was so fun. I really recommend y'all looking into this. This was my Book of the Month edition, which is Book of the Month. Shelby really put me onto that and I love it. It's so beautiful. So highly recommend. That was number 5.
Right before we get to our top 3, this is a great time for me to talk about how I could not actually pick 10 books. So my number 4 spot is for all of the, I feel like I got very lucky. I feel like all of the books that I read this year were so good. There were very few that I was just like, no, that was just not even a good book. Like, there were very few that I felt like was just not a good book. Like, I feel like I read lots. So it was very hard for me to pick the number 4 spot. So I'm just going to rattle off a few that I think could be number 4. One of them is Ask Again Yes, which is a book that we read early on in BookTube, and we did a book talk on it, and it was beautiful.
It was good.
Another one could be, can I hold up your copy?
It's our copy.
The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, I believe. Yeah. This book, I do not read a lot of fantasy. I do not read a lot of, like, magical books. I don't even know. Have I even read one this year? Other than this, I don't know. This book is, other than the Hunger Games this year, that once it ended, I felt so, like, homesick. I was like, I miss those characters. I felt so sad, and I hope that he makes 5 more but I don't think he will. But if he did, I would love it. TJ Klune, if you're watching this, please make more. This could be one of them. Where the Crawdads Sing?
Yes,
that could have been in number
barely
4.
edged out of mine.
I couldn't decide for number 4, but yeah, I'll give The House in the Cerulean Sea a little time to shine right here because I just finished that book and I'm actually still sad.
So my number 4 book is called A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I have read and check-ins for the first book and the second book. The first book, when I finished the first book, I would not have told you that the second book was going to even be in my top 10 at all. It surprised me so much. It's just a really great fantasy. She tells a story where she takes a storyline, she takes a common thing that we see and turns it just a little bit to be unique, to be different, to like keep you wondering what's going on. These books are hefty, y'all. These are independently published. Like, she went out on a limb and did this herself. They're all almost 700 pages and she's popping them out faster than I even know how to imagine. Like, every 6 months she's popping out these bad boys, and it's quality. It's not rushed. They all feel like a continuation. Like I'm just reading a big 3,000 page tome.
Okay, book 4. I'm just going to talk about Hidden Valley Road by Robert Colker. The reason this made my top 10 is not only because it was just an amazing story about this one family filled with so much intensity and so much just pain and suffering within this one family and so much trauma for every single member of this family. Their story's insane. I just want to give it up to Robert Colker, who even wrote this book, because this book, I was reading it and I could not believe that he pulled it off. So much information. He had to do so much research, not just research in the science of schizophrenia and the nature of schizophrenia, but the research that he put into this single family. I mean, his research spanned back generations, and he said in like his acknowledgments, like, thank you to the family for letting me like do a deep dive into y'all's history, but I can't even imagine how long this book must have taken to write.
But imagine also the trauma of that poor family having to relive it, but doing it to heal or to get to help at least someone, maybe. I
mean, it was family members that he talked to, medical professionals. He talked to people who were there at the conception of even talking about what schizophrenia could have been.
Wow,
so he had to really do some great journalism for this book as well.
Because let's all remember, especially me, someone who suffers from anxiety, depression, so up until even, I would say, recent years, it's like, it was almost like you had to keep this stuff hidden in your family. Even if you just have anxiety, which I'm convinced with 3 in 4 people have it. If they don't know it, they have it. Like, you had to keep it within your family. Like, don't let anyone know. To be schizophrenic, to be where you need some severe help, you know? And it's so sad.
The family had to open up about probably things that they thought they were going to take to the grave. Like, this family had to really bear all for this book. And the fact that Robert Colker could, I think something that he also did really well, not to go on a complete tangent, but really quickly, he made you empathetic to the situation when there were some really terrible things happening. So, yeah, that book was just, man, that was crazy. That was an amazing book.
Beyonce, ring the alarm! Top 3! Are these your official top 3, or let's talk about because you said the Hunger Games actually was top 3.
So I'll go really quickly and just say Hunger Games, I got too excited and jumped the gun. That was in my top 3. All the Light We Cannot See probably would have been in the space where I put the Hunger Games, just swap them. Know that I would be talking about Hunger Games now, but I'll talk about All the Light We Cannot See. Guys, this book was beautiful. It like mixed everything that I love. There was like some wonderful magical lore like happening in the background the whole time. A bond between a father and his daughter. I love when books talk about just the good nature of children. Also, this is just a lesson in like, look what happens. Like, look what war does to children. And then just the writing was beautiful. So all around, maybe this is in the top 3. Maybe this and Hunger Games are up here.
You're so indecisive.
I know.
All these books
really
are great.
Hard.
Yeah.
I would recommend everybody in the world read this book, unless you get kind of bored by like kind of historical things, I guess. I think sometimes it moves a little slowly, so if you need it to be like boom, boom, boom action all the time, I don't know if you'd like this, but if you don't need things to be like that, I would recommend that you read this.
Okay, so now here into my top 3. Number 3, we have, and I will say this was going to be number 1 for much of the year, because the final 2 I read in the last half. So this was like the number 1 book. It was called The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. Y'all, I put this at the top because when I was reading it, the joy I felt. Favorite trope is enemies to lovers. This did so well. I was squealing. I had to call Shelby. I was texting her. I was talking to my husband nonstop about it. And it's not a long book, so I was squealing. It's upside down, the covers. Every 10 pages, I was squealing. It had a very strong, sexually empowered main character. It was so good. Y'all, if you love enemies to lover, please read this book. It made me so happy, and I'm gonna read it again next year. This might be in my top 10
next year too,
because I'm reading it. My number 2 book, which I just finished it this week, so it edged out, I think. What book got edged out? Oh, Serpent and Dove. It is, as Shelby told y'all, The House in the Cerulean Sea. I can say 100% that the characters will be missed. Like, it became like my own family as I was reading it. This is one of those books that got so much buzz. It almost has a near perfect score on Goodreads. I was like, it says right here on the front, this book is very close to perfect. I think everyone can agree. I saw so many people talking about how it put them in the book slump. And I think it's because you just miss them. They're your friends, they're your family. You love these characters. And it had to go number 2. So TJ Klune, thank you for writing something that healed my soul. Like it like felt good to my soul to read this.
I'll say that my number 2, actually, The Silent Patient's probably my number 3.
Me trying to like put this in order, like if I were...
I'm sorry. I know if you were putting it. The Silent Patient, actually there are probably a few books underneath it that I would say I enjoyed more or were better books, but I had to put it in the top 3 because I think this was the very first book I read this year.
I think so.
The first book that I read this year, and it just started off our channel with a bang, not just because it like was great content, but because it got me excited to read. Set the bar high. It was super twisty. This was probably the book this year that I dug the deepest into and I thought about the most, and I was constantly conspiring. Because we did it in 2 parts, we were really able to dig deep into what was this book trying to say.
Should we have dug that deep?
Probably not. But it was so fun, and I have such fond memories with this book.
And this makes me feel like he's now our go-to. Like, if he puts out a book, we're going to do book talks.
Yeah, because he's been there with us from the beginning. Doesn't know we exist.
He doesn't know that it's actually Donica, Shelby, and Alex Reed.
Yeah, guys, this had to be in the top 3 because of just the fond memories I have from the beginning of the year with this.
Aww.
I didn't know how terrible things would truly get.
Final one. Now, I will say, we were going to read our top 3 books. You read my top 3, I read your top 3. I think I've read all of your top books almost. So why don't we just do...
I was going to say, why don't
top 1.
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
Are y'all ready? If you can guess what my number 1 book is, it's not impressive because it was always going to be this. Crescent City by Sarah J. Mann. Sarah J, I affectionately call her. She probably would hate to know I call her that. She's my go-to. Anything she writes, I will read it. I will 99% of the time love it. And this did not disappoint. This is her new... Okay, first of all, I will tell y'all, urban fantasy is one of my top genres that I just love. I love city settings. I love real world where there are magical creatures. And this is more magical world than real, I would say. Y'all, it's so good. This book made me cry so hard. This book made me cry harder than any book this year, and it's because her characters, I fall so madly in love with them. It was so good. I'm so thankful this is the start of a series because I can't wait for more. That cover is beautiful. Cannot wait for the second book coming out hopefully next year. That was it. That was my top 10.
Well, thank you. That was beautiful. I knew it was going to be Crescent City.
I knew this book had to be.
I feel like our top books were referenced pretty frequently on our channel. I compared everything to my number 1, which is Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. And actually, when I read the book, I didn't have this version because Donica got this for me for Christmas. She got me the beautiful Book of the Month version.
She randomly found that book at half price, right? Mm-hmm. And she fell so in love with it. Shelby loves Book of the Month. Like, she makes it known that this little thing makes her so happy on her shelf.
They're so cool.
So when I was like, I looked on Amazon because I was going to try to find, like, the best edition I could find. And this was it. This was the best edition. And it's beautiful. I'm so happy.
And I didn't have an orange Book of the Month tab yet. So I had, like, red, yellow, green, black. But I didn't have orange yet. And it completes it. Guys, this book is so good.
And this is, like, actually you. I didn't realize that, like, this...
Oh my gosh!
It's you.
Wow. Okay, the book that Haunting of Hill House kind of reminds me of is Eleanor Oliphant because their main characters resonate with me so much. Just as a person sometimes, I feel like I'm always the person who's... someone will say something and I'm like, really? And they're like, that was sarcasm. And I'm like... How was I supposed to know? Like, I feel like I'm slow to catch on to things, kind of slow to understand sometimes. And Eleanor Oliphant was my buddy through this entire book. It was funny. It was beautiful. It was really moving. It was really just kind of a story about life and where you are and the things that, like, we've gone through. They, as much as we like to sometimes push them to the back, like, they made us who we are, for the better, for the worse, and we have to face them if we're going to move forward in any way. Eleanor definitely had to face what happened to her, and it was just beautiful, and she had a great friend along the way, and I think that was what was so nice, is that I think for some personalities, it takes someone really patient and kind and loving to just really say, like, I'm going to stick there with you, even if you don't always know how to be there back for me, like, I'm going to be there for you, and Eleanor had someone. And I think another really beautiful thing is that someone was a man, but there wasn't anything ever explicitly like they were each other's love interest. Like, he was just there for her no matter what. This touching book is one that I recommend to the world. I'm going to switch. I'm going to give you this one. And I had thought about doing a read and check-in. That's why some things are tabbed, but just ignore those. It's going to be like when I read off your Kindle and I accidentally read your comments. I'm not going to put, like, a time frame on when we'll read this. Whenever you get time this year, if you're looking for, like, an epic whatever this is, just read it. I will try to read this in January, though. I was going to say, read that right before you're going to read something epic, because it's going to probably be a lot slower than anything you're going to read in January. I know I'll love this, because anything Shelby loves, I know it's going to be good. It's just, I am a very sensitive soul, and some of the things she reads I'm like, how are you the nicest person I know, and how can you dive into the horror of the human, anything, the horrors that humans can do. Well, I'm super excited to read this too. You are gonna have you don't even know what an urban fantasy can be. No, because her books take me to another world every single time. Everything she's recommended to me this year has, like, reignited my love of reading, so I'm really excited. That is going to be such an adventure. I can't even tell you. But y'all, that was our top 10. Oh my gosh, our first through the top 10. It's just been so fun. This is just so fun. This channel is so fun. It is fun. It's like my little fun. It's a little escape. Yeah. Thank y'all so much for watching, guys. Thank you for sticking around with us. Can't wait for next year. Can't wait for more book talks, more fun, more everything. Thank y'all so much. It is weird just to see when the numbers kept going up. That was the weirdest thing for me, and I'm just really, really grateful. And also, every comment is so appreciated. Like, it is, I look at them and I'm like, wow, that's the best thing I've ever read. And like, every comment, I respond, y'all, and I feel like I'm the weirdest. Like, I have the weirdest online voice when I'm commenting, because I want to just say how much I appreciate you, but, like, not be weird. So I'll just be like, LOL, emoji. It's like, love you. Yeah, everything is just to take time out of your day to watch a video, or even take time to write a comment. Like, personally, for me, it's kind of hard to comment on YouTubers that I like, because I'm like, well, what if they don't read it, or what if I don't know. But I will tell you on this, I don't care if we have 1 subscriber or 1 million bazillion, I will respond and like every one of your comments. I will put time out. If you put time out, I'm gonna always put time out.
And that's my promise to you. Elect me as BookTube president. Alright guys, well, thank you for sticking around. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this video. Share if you care, because I want people to know what my top 10 are and what your top 10 are, because they're incredible and I want people to read them. We got a little something for everybody, I think.
I think so. I really do think so.
Alright guys, we all take care. Stay safe in the new year. Let's all just keep going, y'all. Yeah. We made it this far and you can go further. I promise you. Or farther. I don't know. What's the grammatically?
I don't know either. I really don't.
Well, y'all take care. We'll see you in our next video. Bye.